Good evening, friends. It's night 27 on the Elul Screen Challenge, journeying our way to Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, reading passages from Inner Work, teachings of Rav Ashlag. Page 47. Sometimes our belief in the goodness of God can be so strong that there is a feeling of complete perfection. Sometimes our belief in the goodness of God can be so strong that there is a feeling of complete perfection. At other times, we experience pain and suffering from feeling disconnected from God and imprisoned by our desire to receive. At other times, we experience pain and suffering from feeling disconnected from God and imprisoned by our desire to receive. These feelings are opposite and contradictory. They are opposite and contradictory. The space between these mutually exclusive feelings is the vessel for divine service. The space between these mutually exclusive feelings is the vessel for divine service. All right? So sometimes our belief, our emunah in the goodness of God is so strong that there's like this feeling of complete perfection. Meaning you tap into the right line, you tap into the perfection of the universe, the perfection of reality, the perfection of life, perfection of God, the goodness, the complete and utter goodness of God. And that feeling of connection is so strong that you're in the perfection. You're in that right line of consciousness. At other times, we feel the pain and suffering from feeling deeply disconnected from God, which I imagine is most of our experience. The pain and suffering from feeling deeply disconnected from God and imprisoned to our desire to receive. Totally, right? So these feelings are opposite and contradictory. The space between these mutually exclusive feelings is the vessel for divine experience. I mean, I don't 100% understand this, but my sense is that these are the poles, like feeling the perfection of creation and existence and feeling complete disconnection and brokenness and imprisonment from the desire to receive. So no will, no agency, just stuck in pain and suffering and disconnection and imprisonment. The space between these is where we actually have the possibility of divine experience or divine service, where we have the possibility for living through emunah. Because in the first and the right line, it's revealed. So there's no work. You're already in completion. You're in a sort of what we might call a non-dual state of consciousness. So there's nothing to do. You're kind of it. So there's no divine experience because there's no experiencer. You are it, right? That's like the teachings of Nisargadatta Maharaj of I am that. Right? So if you are that, then there is no divine experience because you are it. On the other extreme, on the other end of the spectrum, there's you're consumed by pain and suffering, and you are you're imprisoned by the desire to receive. So there's also no you. There's no possibility in that moment to bring online a consciousness that can be in connection with the divine and divine service, because you're consumed and imprisoned by the desire to receive. So really it's the space in between these poles, these polar opposites, that divine experience and divine service can take place. That's how I'm understanding it. Well, when we understand that our brokenness is from God, then we know that our healing is from God, right? Very, very simple. When we understand our brokenness is from God, that our brokenness is part of the plan, it's also an extension of God. It's not outside of or separate from God. That's when we then know that our healing is also from God, that our healing comes from God. Our healing comes from the recognition that all is God, that all is an extension of the divine. There's nothing that's separate from God. And then once we see that, then we can embrace and access our healing that comes from God. Straightforward. Prayer has two aspects. On the one hand, we need to pray from the depths of our heart. On the other hand, we are not to require that God answer our prayer. On the one hand, we need to pray from the depths of our heart. On the other hand, we are not to require that God answer our prayer. We need to be patient and believe that it is for our good when a prayer is not answered, and then continue to pray, right? It's sort of a prayer 101. Pray from the depths of your heart, but don't expect that it should be answered. And also at the same time, have a faith in if it's not answered, it's actually for your good. That is also like a deep faith. And again, you could have that as sort of a surface level faith and trust in the divine, and you can have that as an embodied faith and a faith of emunah. Divine light that would cause us to increase our level of divine service is concealed from us, because our service would then be rooted in understanding rather than emunah. Divine light that does not increase our level of service can be revealed, right? So the divine light that would cause us to increase our level of divine service has to be concealed from us. Because if that divine light would come down, then our divine service would be, it's saying it'd be rooted in understanding. In this case, understanding is meaning the revelation of God, that all is God. And when you have that revelation that all is God, there's no choice to serve. You're automatically in divine service. You can't not choose to be in divine service. It's like when you're in the light, you can't create darkness. It's not possible. You're compelled automatically to be in divine service. So if that divine light would increase, if that divine light would shine upon us, that would retroactively force us to increase our divine service. And that kind of divine service wouldn't be motivated from within, and it wouldn't take work and effort, and thus it wouldn't be a true reward, because there's no one that's working to get the light and to be in divine service, right? It's similar to the previous passage, 2 passages ago. right? That when we are in that space of union with the divine, when we're in the right line of consciousness, there's no I, there is no self, we're in full union. And so there's no one really there to do the divine service. You're already it. So similarly in this passage, that kind of divine light must be concealed from us so that we can actually work to do the divine service, so that we can work to have a separate sense of self that then attains the pleasure beyond measure and maintains a separate self in order to experience it. It's kind of like a little bit of a flip on the non-dual, which is that the I in the non-dual, the I disappears and merges completely with the divine, whereas in this paradigm, there's an I that stays separate, that is in service, and that also is in union. And so that divine, that self, that separate self, maintains its boundary within the unity, which is seems paradoxical, and I think it's part of the Kabbalistic framework for the purpose of creation, that we were in Ein Sof, in the infinite, we were in complete union, and we did not have a sense of separate self. It was only once the light was removed from the vessel that the vessel actually became a vessel. It actually became a vessel because it had the lack of the light. And then it had a separate sense of self that could then work to receive the light again, but now maintain a sense of the vessel. So divine light that does not increase our level of service can be revealed. And maybe I would say, and forgive me for, this could be totally out of line. Maybe I would say that divine light that does not divine light that does not increase our level of service can be revealed. It's sort of like divine light does not obliterate our level of service can be revealed. Divine light that can increase it, I think that too can be revealed, right? Like if we have little experiences of the divine, moments or states of consciousness that we see God, that we kind of come out of the clouds and above the clouds and into the light, then we come down and then we have some energy and some memory that can help us, propel us to be in divine service, even when we're not back down out of the light and in the darkness. So I wonder if that's what the Rav means here. I'm not sure. I could totally be wrong. Divine light that does not increase our level of service can be revealed. I think it's saying divine light that doesn't force us to increase our level of service because it overwhelms our sense of self. It overwhelms our separation, and thereby obliterates our self, our separate self, that is the separate self that can do the divine service. Let me know if you have a different thought. Final passage. When we are in a state of spiritual descent and feel nothing in our spiritual work, we need to believe this is for our good. Every spiritual descent necessitates deeper clarification of the desires of our soul. Right? So this, again, a lot of this is really geared towards the person who's really doing this inner work and is really committed to it, who's doing it daily, moment to moment, committed with all their heart and soul to it. So when that person is in a state of spiritual descent, right? They're working hard to be in union with spirit. They're working hard to be in emunah, in embodied faith. They're working really hard to be in divine service. And when that person is in a state of spiritual descent, and they feel nothing in their spiritual work feels empty. There's no light, there's no energy to it. We must in that moment believe that this is for our good, that there's some divine purpose, there's some divine meaning in our state of spiritual descent, in our state of feeling emptiness within our spiritual practice. This is because every spiritual descent necessitates deeper clarification of the desires of the soul. So every spiritual descent, every time we go low and into the darkness, it forces a deeper clarification of the desires of the soul. It forces the soul to even more so clarify its desires. It comes down and it forces in that darkness, it forces the soul to even clarify even more so its desire to be in union with God, to be in service to God, and to push through the darkness, right? It's that spiritual weightlifting. If you're in the light all the time, you're not working, you're not lifting any weights. You're just in it. You're just blissing. You're riding the wave. You're good to go. It's only when we go into states of darkness or states of difficulty, when that's the pressure that forms the diamond of our soul. That's the pressure that creates the soul to shine and push through and lift up that darkness, lift up from that descent into the depths. That's what creates those spiritual muscles. If we didn't have descent into darkness, we couldn't build the muscle to rise above that and to come into a state of union and move through that challenge of descent. Okay, great teachings tonight. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you tomorrow.